What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my updated top 25 for week 3, or I should say entering week 3 of the college football season. And guys, week 2 kind of felt like week 12. There were so many really good games. There were so many just absolutely fun environments, some crazy games, some crazy comebacks, and it led to quite a bit of change throughout my top 25, especially as you get towards the bottom of my top 25. And we're going to dive into all of the changes here in just a little bit. But before we do that, you guys know I have to say thank you for all the love and support the channel is seeing, to continue to show your support for the channel in any way you can. If you're as big of a college football nerd as I am, you got to hit the subscribe button and you got to ring the bell so you know whenever I upload videos during the college football season, as well as prediction videos and any other fun things that I may cook up here on the channel, as well as liking, commenting, sharing. Just please help support the channel any way you can, and I thank you so much for taking time out of, I'm sure, your busy day to watch this video. It really does help support me. But if you want to support me in more ways outside of YouTube, you want to listen to me call games, you want to see articles I write, and you want to follow along with my journey to be a sports media professional and all the work I do here on and off campus, go follow me on Twitter at TailgateNate29. That's at capital T N 29, or that's at capital T Tailgate at capital N Nate 29. Letters 29. I said that really confusingly, but go search me up over there. It's the same logo that I use. That's literally right behind me for my YouTube channel, and I would really appreciate the support over there as well. So I really appreciate whatever you guys are willing and able to do. But now let's go ahead and dive on in to my top 25. Again, as we begin the top 25 list, I got to go through. Give me 1 second. Bloop, put that one in the blooper reel. Okay, for real this time now, though, I got to dive on in to my honorable mention list first. These are all the teams that were very close to being in my top 25, but just didn't end up making the cut. Kansas and Iowa were two teams that were in the top 25 that lost this past week. And even though they lost to some teams that, obviously you see Illinois there as a team that, look, Luke Altmaier looks a lot better than he did last season, was really impressed with Illinois' defense as well. And Iowa lost to Iowa State, who was one of my honorable mentions from last week. And you don't see them here, which you probably know what that means. They lost to a very good team. And if I had if I had an additional 5, you'd see Kansas and Iowa on that list, as you would with Texas A&M, who very well at the moment may be team number 26, but it's between Kansas, Texas A&M, and Iowa. Probably my first 3 out are right there. Then you go ahead and look at a team like Washington, who did have their struggles against Eastern Michigan, but was able to pull away. Still a team that I think has a lot of potential. They are still an honorable mention. And then some group of 5 teams as well. Memphis, who's close to breaking in. If they beat Florida State, they very well might make it. Liberty is one of the teams there as well, to which Liberty really struggled with New Mexico State. If they turn it on, they play a lot better. I could see Liberty really making a run. And then Northern Illinois just pulled off upset of the year up to this point when they went on the road and beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, a top 5 team. It's the biggest win in program history for the Huskies, who might be on their way to a MAC championship. I also haven't mentioned Boston College here. Boston College, a team that I see other people ranking. I'm not quite there with the Eagles quite yet. Maybe, especially if they're able to beat Missouri this upcoming week. Okay, yeah, I definitely will end up putting Boston College in my top 25, but I want to see a little bit more from them before I can put Boston College in my top 25. So those are the 9 teams that were just this close. Again, if I had a 26 through 34, those would be the 9 teams you'd see right there. Maybe one other, I'd have to come up with one. But if you want to know who's actually in my top 25, well, I'm about to tell you right now. Let's start out with this one here. And I know what some people may say. You can't rank Boise State after they lost. Sure, I can. It's my poll. I can do whatever I want. And Boise State has been one of the most impressive teams in the nation so far. I know they had their struggles, especially defensively against Georgia Southern, but that's a team that has a lot of really good offensive weapons, and they just pushed Oregon to the absolute brink. Ashton Genty is probably going to be the best running back in college football this season. You'll want to see Maddox Madsen improve, but overall, I've been really impressed with what I've seen out of Boise State so far. Now, they are 25 for a reason. They still have that one loss. Granted, it's to a team that, at least as of right now, has a lot of concerns, but is probably still going to end up making the college football playoff once it's all said and done. I really like Boise State this season. I think, again, if you watch my weekly takeaway video, I think they're going to run away with a group of 5 spot to get into the college football playoff. While there's some other really talented teams there, Memphis, Liberty, as you saw earlier, Northern Illinois is there. That could make a run. UNLV is there as well. I think Boise State is the best of the bunch. I've thought that for however long now. And the Broncos, I have decided to rank here at number 25. At 24, I've put the Syracuse Orange. And look, I told people here, don't count out Syracuse, and people were going to find out how good Kyle McCord really is. He was under a big, heavy spotlight in Columbus. He transferred over to Syracuse, and he is absolutely shining. He looks really, really good. There are a lot of weapons at Syracuse that are working phenomenally with Kyle McCord. The defense looks really good. They just beat Georgia Tech, a team that was in my poll this past week. And probably if I had to throw a 10th team there on that graphic that you just saw, Georgia Tech might very well be the 12th team. I think Georgia Tech is still going to be pretty darn good. NC State also would probably still be there. But of course, they both are now no longer in the poll. Syracuse is a team you got to watch out for, man. They're going to be really dangerous this season and definitely could be a player in the ACC conversation. Arizona is here at number 23. They fell 4 spots from last week. They really struggled with Northern Arizona. And even if you go back to the New Mexico game, their defense really struggled in that one as well. Now, Tyrell McMillan, Noah Fafita, even though they struggled this past week, for the most part, they still look really, really good. But that Arizona defense has got to get a lot of things figured out. And I still think, again, it's a lot of Brent Brennan trying to adjust to play at the power 4 level, and a lot of new pieces there in that program. They did lose a lot on defense, a lot of guys stepping up and playing some bigger roles. Hey, Arizona gets a huge, huge, huge opportunity this week when they play Kansas State. If they can win that one, I mean, Arizona can definitely prove a couple of things to all of us. But let's go ahead and dive on in higher in the poll. Nebraska, welcome back to the top 25. Cornhuskers, they're in my poll here at number 22. And say what you want about UTEP and Colorado. UTEP just lost to an FCS team in Southern Utah. And Colorado, well, we've seen how they've looked this season. We know they still have offensive line, defensive line problems, some culture issues, and whatever have you. But apart from all of that, Nebraska has looked very, very impressive this season. Dylan Raiola is finally giving the Cornhuskers a quarterback that doesn't turn the football over. It can manage the game more effectively, and he can even be a star. Yes, the stats will get better for Dylan Raiola. They have a really good run game. They have some good pieces at wide receiver, but that defense, oh my goodness, it was incredible in that game against Colorado. It was flying all over the field. It was able to limit Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter and that electric Colorado offense to only 10 points, and I believe under 300 yards of total offense. That Nebraska defense, yes, is a big reason, probably mostly the reason why they are in a top 25 position in my poll. But Dylan Raiola, man, he's going to be a stud. He's a really good player. He gives Nebraska a good quarterback there at 22. And Iowa State, welcome to the poll. Cyclones, they're in here at number 21. Very impressive come from behind win against the Iowa Hawkeyes, who probably are going to prove to be one of the better sides within the Big Ten Conference this season. Iowa looks like they have a little bit of a better offense than last year, if not a ton better offense, but the defense definitely did lapse a little bit. Iowa State took advantage. They made some big defensive plays of their own, and I really, really liked overall what I saw from the Cyclones there in that game. So very good things I see from Iowa State. Rocco Becht is really starting to come around. That young talent mixed with experience on the defensive side, especially showed out in that second half for the Cyclones, and they are absolutely deserving of a top 25 ranking here after beating their rival in the Iowa Hawkeyes. Okay, no new teams to the poll. You have 4 new teams here. You will see no one else new that we rise up now into the top 20, but 2 teams that did jump 5 spots from last week are both Clemson and Louisville. I'll kind of talk about them as a whole because, well, Louisville just went ahead and dominated Jacksonville State. I don't really have much to say about Louisville until they start to play a little bit of better teams here once they get into ACC play. But for the most part, Louisville looks good. Jeff Brom teams are always criminally underrated, and I probably still am underrating Louisville here at number 20, but that's where they sit in my poll. Again, they got to play a little bit of tougher competition to move a little bit higher. Clemson, you were kind of wondering, okay, how is this offense going to look after only scoring 3 points against, albeit probably one of the better defenses in college football in the Georgia Bulldogs, but they exploded against a really good App State team that, albeit is more known for their offense than their defense, but they went and scored 66. Klubnik looked good. That rush game looked good. The chemistry with the wide receivers was there. Even the defense, yeah, they gave up 20 points, but again, that's a passing attack with App State that's going to be really tough to defend. Clemson did pretty well for the most part against it, and that's a big reason why Clemson is jumping 5 spots. Louisville, their ACC running mate, right there with them. Notre Dame, why do you keep doing this to us? It feels like Notre Dame does this every year, right? You go back a couple years ago where they beat a big-time opponent. I forget who it was, but then they went and lost to Marshall the very next week. Same kind of thing here. You go on the road, get a statement win in Aggieland, in Kyle Field against Texas A&M, and then you come back home and you look at the rest of the schedule. Oh, yeah, this is going to be a cakewalk until, I don't know, that game might be a little hard, that game might be a little hard, but we got this, right? Clearly, they didn't. They just lost to Northern Illinois, and I'm not taking anything away from what the Huskies did. The Huskies are probably, now with that win and the way that they looked, going to be one of the better teams in the Mid-American Conference this season, could probably push for a conference championship. But Notre Dame, what are we doing? We got to crank things out and get things figured out. And Notre Dame looked to be a shoo-in for the college football playoff. They don't have a way to get that conference championship game. And even if they do finish 11-1, I mean, their resumes, yeah, if they win out, they'll have a win over Louisville. They'll have a win over Florida State, but that doesn't look as good. USC, okay, they could be pretty solid as well. But as of right now, I mean, Notre Dame might lose the game to Louisville. They might lose the game against maybe even Georgia Tech. They might lose that game against USC at the very end of the year. A lot of things that Notre Dame has just got to get better, guys. Riley Leonard's got to play better. That rush defense has to be limiting the big plays more. Again, I talked a lot about this in my weekly takeaway video. Notre Dame, the biggest faller of the week. They fell 13 spots to number 18, again, from where I had them last week at number 5. Michigan also did drop, not as much, and I wasn't really super surprised with the result that we got in Ann Arbor. I kind of figured that Texas was going to be able to beat this Michigan Wolverines team, but I did not think that they would beat them that bad. I thought it would be, yes, I thought Texas would still win by 2 touchdowns, but I thought it would at very least be a little bit more of a competitive game from start to finish, and it was not. Michigan defensively held up pretty solidly. Yes, they did allow 10 of 16 on third down, which can't happen again, but overall, Michigan offensively, I have a ton of concerns. The offensive line is not as good as it has been. Davis Warren and Alex Orji are anything but inspiring at the quarterback position. The wide receiver room still needs to take it a step up and play. And overall, they're just not utilizing Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings like I think they should. This is a team that throughout most of its time under Jim Harbaugh was a run-first team. In that previous game, Davis Warren 33 pass attempts and only 22 carries, of which Donovan Edwards got 8 and Kalel Mullings got 6. That needs to get better. Those are 2 very talented backs that deserve the football more, and all you need Davis Warren to do is be a game manager. He's not as talented as J.J. McCarthy, but he's got to sort of fill that McCarthy role of just being a game manager. Don't turn over the ball. Keep things in front of you and keep the ball driving down the field when you need to make a throw. Quarterback play's got to get fixed. They got to utilize some pieces a little bit better offensively. And Michigan's fallen 5 spots here to number 17. 16 is LSU. I still believe in this Tiger team a lot, even though they did lose. And honestly, I don't really have much more to say about LSU. They rise up because a couple other teams fell. Still feel like Nussmeier and this LSU offense will find it. The defense, sure, it still does need some improvement, and it really did struggle with Nichols here earlier this week. But when you take a look at LSU overall, still think it's going to be a solid football team. They're up here to number 16. They ran away with things against Nichols in the second half. Moving into the top 15. Oh, well, you got Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. Obviously, Oklahoma now playing inside of the SEC. But, I mean, hey, some very familiar current and former Big 12 teams that are in this section of my poll. Oklahoma is here at number 15, and I mean, look, they only beat Houston by 4. If there weren't as many teams that fell in the poll, Oklahoma probably would have fell with them, but I still like what the Sooners are about. I still like Jackson Arnold. I like that wide receiver room. The defense has gotten better. They only allowed Houston to get 12 points. Houston just not a very good team, though, and the offense definitely could have played a lot better in that game. We'll need to see improvements from Oklahoma as they do have Tulane this week, and Tulane, they gave Kansas State quite a scare. Tulane could be another team to where, hey, if you were to put them in the top 25 poll right now, I wouldn't necessarily argue it because Tulane did look really, really good in that game. They look like they can contend for an American Athletic title. Kansas State, you still want better from Avery Johnson, and there were some very questionable play calls at the end of that game there with pass interferences and holdings and things like that. But Kansas State, despite all of it, came out on top. They came out with the win, which obviously is the most important piece of information to gather here. Kansas State, though, guys, they have just got to be able to get more from Avery Johnson. I think they got to get a little bit more production offensively, but the defense stepped up when it needed to. They end up getting the big road win. The defense even, of course, had a defensive touchdown, which might have either tied it or given them the lead. I do not remember which one, but regardless, Kansas State, guys, they're going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12 this season. They'll push for a Big 12 title. I got Kansas State up there at number 14. And Oklahoma State, how about the Cowboys, huh? They get a come from behind victory against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Very tough game for them, and the Razorback defense was able to handle Ollie Gordon, who probably also didn't run as well as he usually does. But for the most part, guys, Oklahoma State looked really good. Alan Bowman sort of reverted back to his last year's form in this game. But overall, very, very good stuff that I saw out of Oklahoma State, both offensively and defensively. Yeah, the defense still did not look great. You still want the defense to get better, but I have seen ways, the stats won't tell you this, but I have seen ways in which it has improved. They are getting a little bit more pressure into the backfields. The secondary's challenging balls a little bit better, but overall, again, still a lot of work that needs to be done, especially with that Cowboy defense. They'll be a player in the Big 12 conversation, though. They're up to number 13. Whew, we got to take a quick water break, as it is important to stay hydrated out there. USC, don't really have anything much more to say about him than I said last week. Miller Moss is a really good quarterback, and that USC defense seems to be much, much improved. They shut out Utah State in a game where they, last year, probably would have given up at least 20 to an Aggie team that might not fare too well in the Mountain West this season. USC is a really, really good team this year. They're absolutely a college football playoff player, and they're going to be right there in that mix to get in the 12-team playoff once everything is said and done. USC's up 2 spots to 12. Utah has stayed put. Look, Cam Rising went out again, but it seems like everything is going to be okay. They were dominating Baylor early on. As soon as he went out, well, you really figured out how valuable he was to this Utah team. Baylor was able to score some points, but overall, the Utah defense holds strong. Kind of what I figured would happen with Utah this season, but Cam Rising going down, look, man, we hope and pray that he is okay. He cannot miss more time here. I really, really like what I've seen from Rising so far. Brant Keithy coming back has been huge for this offense in Utah. I believe my highest ranking team out of the Big 12. They're up here to number 11. But it is going to be an SEC and Big 10 heavy top 10. Apart from the Miami Hurricanes out of the ACC, not a lot of movement within my top 10, although you do see one team up there that I'll talk about when we get there. Miami still looked as impressive as ever against Florida A&M. Again, Cam Ward is that guy. Damian Martinez fits in well. Miami just looks very impressive there here at number 10. Missouri is still not allowed a point this season, one of only 2 football teams to do so, the other of which is the Purdue Boilermakers. But the Missouri Tigers, Luther Burden, best wide receiver in college football. You definitely could argue that, if not even prove it. You go ahead and take a look at Brady Cook, who still looks really good this season, and the Missouri defense, which even though they lost Blake Baker, has not skipped a beat. Yes, it lost Blake Baker, a lot of really good talent. It hasn't skipped a beat from where it was last season. Really like the way that Missouri has played so far this year. They're deserving of a top 10 ranking. They stay here at number 9. There are some things that Oregon needs to fix, man. I contemplated having Missouri or Miami jump them, but overall, I do think at the end of the day, it almost kind of impresses you that even with how much Oregon struggled, the offensive line still was not getting the push it needs. It allowed 4 sacks against Boise State in this last game. The defense, it needs a lot of fixing and wasn't getting enough pressure. It wasn't slowing down Ashton Genty as much as it needs to. The secondary, it fared really well, but then the turnovers helped plague Oregon. It's almost impressive that they found a way to win that game and still come out with a win in Autzen Stadium, because for the most part, you could argue, guys, Boise State outplayed them. They definitely did. I think Boise State was the better team in that game. Oregon still was able to find a way to win. And look, this team is going to get better. The offensive line is going to get better. Dylan Gabriel is not the problem. His wide receivers are not the problem. Even Jordan James was running really well behind an overall struggling offensive line. The defense needs a lot of things fixed, especially in that defensive front 6, front 7. The secondary's been playing pretty well so far, and that offensive line. That is the big thing that needs to improve. Limit the turnovers from the past week, and Oregon should be able to turn it up. But Penn State, they're now here at number 7, as they were last week. They had a struggle fest of their own. Penn State might very well be a top 10 or a top 5 team to me if they didn't struggle against Bowling Green. Now, again, Bowling Green, much like Northern Illinois, might prove to be one of the better teams in the Mid-American Conference, but they were down in that game at halftime. Penn State, a lot of fans in Happy Valley got a little bit worried there for a second. Drew Aller was able to get the downfield ball working. The run game ripped off some really, really big-time plays, and Penn State was able to secure that win. Defense coming up big throughout points in that game as well. And when you want to talk about defense, let's talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. They are up 7 spots from last week and right there near a top 5 ranking. Look, we knew the Tennessee offense was going to be good this season. That is not the big takeaway from the game against NC State. I know a lot of people are questioning NC State and saying, oh, we don't know how good they're going to be. They struggled with Western Carolina. And while that fact is true, I think that's more so for the defensive end for North Carolina State because offensively they scored or they allowed not allowed they gained, there we go, I finally found it, third time's a charm, 525 plus yards in the game against Western Carolina. They have Grayson McCall, they have Jordan Waters, they have Kevin Concepcion, they have Justin Jolly. There's a lot of really good players and a really good offensive line to lead that offense. Defensively is where the concerns come in for NC State, but defensively was where the concerns were for Tennessee at the beginning of the year. Nope, not anymore. They looked fantastic. And Tennessee, I mean, go Rocky Top. Nico Iamaleava is the real deal. They are going to have a really good defense this year. And Tennessee is going to be really, really tough to beat. They're up 7 spots to number 6, man. They're this close to getting into a top 10 ranking. I felt like, though, Alabama deserves a top 5 ranking over them just a little bit. And I know they did struggle with South Florida, but they were able to pull away at the end. Overall, I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Alabama's defense. I've been really impressed from what I've seen out of Jalen Milroe and this offense. And overall, I mean, look, you just kind of have to figure Kalen DeBoer is going to settle in. He's going to find his rhythm. An interesting test coming up against Wisconsin. That will be a very fascinating game. And then you have Georgia coming up in just a couple of weeks here. That's going to be one of the biggest games of the college football season. But Bama jumps up 1 spot here to 5 because Notre Dame lost, and my top 4 have remained the same. The only thing that I think you even could change is exactly what the AP poll did. You could switch Ohio State and Texas there because, again, Texas has a big-time win over Michigan on the road. They beat them by 24. Michigan was a top 10 team. And yes, I just think that Ohio State has still been really, really impressive. They beat down Western Michigan 56-0 without playing most of the game with Denzel Burke, their best corner, because of a targeting factor. And look, it really was. Georgia is the number 1 team in the country, and Ole Miss is number 4, at least to me. You could probably argue that Bama is 4, but Ole Miss to me is 4, Georgia is 1, and Ohio State 2 and 3 with Texas. I'm not really going to argue it I'm not really going to argue for or against any of them. Obviously, I have Ohio State at 2 and Texas at 3. I just think with the way Ohio State looked, with the way Texas looked, I don't really think those two teams deserve to move around much. If you're going based off resume, and resume matters a lot to you, then yes, obviously Texas is going to go up there above the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State to beat Akron and Western Michigan, and Texas just went on the road to be a Michigan team that is going to have a really good defense this year. We'll see how well they contend within the Big Ten Conference. But there you go, guys. I mean, that's the big talking point in my top 5, but really not much else to talk about. Ole Miss was dominant. Ohio State was dominant. Georgia was dominant. Texas looked really, really good. They look like a team that can win the national championship among the elite levels of teams with Georgia and Ohio State. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. Tell me your top 25. Tell me anything you change, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Predictions, hopefully, will either start tomorrow or on Wednesday. Goodbye.